You are listening to the Lawyer Stories podcast with host Benny Gold. Lawyer Stories was founded in July 2017 on Instagram and is an expanding global network of lawyers and law students sharing their personal journeys to the noble profession of the practice of law. Join us on this podcast as we dig deeper into these stories and hear from lawyers and law students from around the world in all areas of the legal profession. Here at Lawyer Stories, we believe that every lawyer has a story. What's yours?
Welcome to the Lawyer Stories podcast with Benny Gold, episode 37. Today, we welcome in our special guest, author, an attorney, Brian LaBovick. How are you?
I'm awesome. Thank you, Benny. I appreciate that. You went with author first, which is so unusual.
Well, actually, I had attorney written down, but I ended up saying author first. So why not,
that.
Right? Why not leave?
I love it. I want to be the author now. You know, coming out next week, I'll be the author.
That's it. We're very excited about that piece of it. So we'll get there in a minute. But so you're in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Is it West Palm Beach or Palm Beach Gardens? And then you have
it's Palm Beach County. You know, it's Palm Beach County, Florida. That's pretty much the area that I practice.
And do you have an office in Boston too? Is that right?
We have a small office in Boston because of another. So we do 4 things in the law firm, and one of them is up in Boston, which is the PIP collection practice.
Okay, very cool. So welcome to the show. It's great to have you on. You're releasing a book, What Is Not a Good Neighbor. We're going to talk about that in a moment. But we did feature you on Lawyer Stories. That's lawyer_stories on Instagram a day or so ago, and I really enjoyed your story. So you told us literally how you went back, how you knew at the moment. And this is what I like to ask. I like to ask people, when did you know? What was that defining moment that said, I'm going to be a lawyer? And you had a situation where you were in Ohio, which I think is that where you're from, Ohio?
I grew up in Ohio. I'm from Pittsburgh originally.
Very good. So you were driving somewhere, you took a right on red, you weren't supposed to, you realized it's sort of in the middle of it. So you backed up and a police officer pulled you over. Tell us the story. It's a really cool story.
Wow, you know the story. That's amazing. You really know the details of the story. And pretty much that's what it was. So, you know, I was a typical high school kid growing up in Dayton, Ohio. My life was about wrestling and girls and hanging out and just a typical Midwestern kid. Awesome. And I worked out at Gold's Gym because Gold's Gym at the time was
no relation, by the way. No relation to Benny Gold. No relation to Benny Gold, by the way.
No relation to Benny Gold's gym. But you know, it was out of California, big, gym. Anyways, so I go down there every day to work out with my buddy. He didn't go with me one day. I went down there. I did my workout. You know, I'm coming home. I had hair out to here, like this. I had a bandana on. That's awesome. I'm in my mom's car, and I go to make a right turn. And I realized, because you could make a right turn on red in Ohio. So halfway through, I see a sign kind of in a weird place off to the side on a lamp pole, on a street lamp pole. And it said no right on red. And I was like, oh man. So, I was trying to follow the law. I backed up and some police officers saw me. There were 2 of them in the car. They pulled beside me. They looked at me. I'm sure they were like, we got to check this punk kid out.
They profiled you.
So, I didn't look like a hardened criminal. I looked like a typical 16-year-old kid, but whatever, they pull me over, they give me a ticket. It was pretty unnecessary. I get the ticket, I go home, I tell my parents, they're like, well, if you don't think it's right, you can fight it. Good luck. So in Ohio, you fight it. They give you a day in court. And I was sitting there with my mom and a woman comes up and she says, hi, Mr. LaBovick, I'm the prosecutor and I'll be prosecuting you today. So for a traffic ticket on a right turn on red, they literally had a judge and a prosecutor. True story. Seems crazy now that I know the court system and how it works. But
they didn't even try to negotiate something like that with you? They just said, I'm just going to prosecute you. And
she was like,
intimidating.
I can't honestly remember if she asked me if I wanted to make a plea at that time. I know there was a prior court hearing I went to when I asked for a trial date and I said I wouldn't plea. And so then they gave me the trial date. But, so I look at my dad, I'm like, I need a lawyer. There's a prosecutor. They're going to prosecute me. And my dad's like, no, I'm not hiring a lawyer for this. There's no way. This is a traffic ticket. You got yourself into this. Good luck. All right. So I go into the courtroom and the judge, sits down. She says what they're here for. It's for my traffic ticket, blah, blah, blah. The prosecutor is going to start. She's going to make an opening statement. You can do that next, and then we'll get into the case. The prosecutor said something. She was talking. I was like, that's not, wait a minute. That's not right. The female judge is like, Mr. LaBovick, sit down. You need to wait your turn, and then you can speak.
Right.
So I got to speak. I got up and probably mumbled something incoherently. I can't remember. And then she called her first witness, who was an officer. And he gets on the stand. And this guy doesn't remember anything about my traffic ticket at all. I'm sure this was one of many. It was 3 months later. Yeah. He has no clue who I am, why he gave me the traffic ticket. He doesn't really, I'm sure, right. I don't know that as a kid. I think it's a conspiracy to cause me pain. So I'm like, Judge, this isn't right. This isn't right. She's like, just relax, Mr. LaBovick. At the end of her question, you can ask him some questions. And at that moment, honest to God, epiphany, like the light went off in my head. Oh, I get to talk to him. Great. And I get a pad of paper from my dad and I start jotting down questions, like one of these yellow pads, right? And I just start whipping down questions that I want to ask, like 2-sentence things to remind me what to ask the guy.
Right.
I probably wrote 15 questions down and I got up and I was on him like white on rice. This guy didn't know what hit him. I was like, bam, 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 and you did this, and then you went here, and then you said this, and then you did that, and then you went over here, and then you did this, and you would agree that this sign is over here, and is that the right space for a sign? And I had no clue what the answer was, and you're never supposed to do that on cross, but he looks at me and he goes, I think it's out of place. Sign's out of place, legally out of place. Oh, okay. So I like let it go at that. I figured he admitted it was out of place. I was like, oh, it's out of place, Your Honor. No further questions. And I sat down.
Yeah.
Kind of like very, I don't know, like movie-ish,
Right.
She called her second officer. He got up on the stand and I said, sir, the other officer said that this sign is out of place. Would you agree it's out of place? He's like, I don't remember. I mean, my recollection is that he admitted it or he didn't remember it. I was like, well, it's out of place. So I sat down. We got done. And the judge is like, okay, you can do your closing argument. My closing argument was the sign's out of place. It's not fair to hold me liable for this sign. And the prosecutor was like, the sign, there's no proof of it. We don't know, blah, blah, blah. The judge looked at her and said, there's reasonable doubt in my mind whether it's in place or not. So I'm going to find him not guilty. Doop.
Wow.
And he ends the case. Prosecutor's going to leave. She goes, Mr. LaBovick, stay. I want to talk to you back in chambers. So I go back with my mom. My dad's like, I got to go to work. I'm out.
Yeah.
So I go with my mom, who's going to drive me home, into her chambers. And she says, what are you doing? And I said, I'm a junior in high school. I'm a 16-year-old kid. I'm going to go to college someday. She goes, yeah, but what kind of courses do you like taking? I'm like, well, I'm in AP biology, AP chemistry, AP physiology. I want to be a doctor.
Yeah.
She's like, no, you don't want to be a doctor. You want to be a lawyer.
Right.
And I was like, she's like, I said, I get to do that? She goes, you need to do that. I have 10-year experienced prosecutors come in who can't cross-examine an officer like that. She's like, that was special. She goes, you got to do this. And from that second forward, I have never questioned again what I need to do in my life.
Really? That's amazing. So regardless, you were going to go to be a doctor. You're just like, forget that. The whole legal, being a lawyer was for you, basically. You knew at that moment. Yeah.
And I grew up with
that gave you a lot of confidence. That gave you a lot of confidence, that right there. I mean,
it was just like this very clear path for me. Like all of a sudden it was like very clear. And you go to college and you got a bunch of friends who are like, don't go to law school. There's a million kids going to law school. It's not really blah, blah, blah. You're not going to make it. And I was like, I'm going to law school. Like from the second I hit college, I was like, I'm going to law school. Like this isn't an if, it's a when. Did
you find like when you went to law school and finally like learned evidence that it was sort of like confused? Like, was it confusing or did it feel natural for you to learn that because you felt you could cross people pretty well?
This has been the thing I'm supposed to do in my life.
That's amazing.
I went through law school. I joined every competition.
Yep.
I killed everything. I was national mock trial team. I was national. I won the competition for our national negotiations team. I knew my evidence quickly. I knew my civ pro relatively quickly. Torts came very naturally to me.
Yeah, I like torts.
Crim law. I got the A in crim law. So I just like, this was what I was supposed to do.
That's great. That's amazing. So you went to
I graduated, order the barrister. There's two
right.
kids, order the barrister in each college, best litigators, best, kids coming out as the trial lawyers. I graduated that. I got into the honors graduate program at the Department of Justice. You can't get into the Department of Justice without 2 years experience, and unless you're in this program. So it was just what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, that's something else. So I'm curious. So you were in Ohio for undergrad, right? You went to Miami of Ohio. So like, how did you end up to the other Miami, the U, for law school? Were you like, man, I got to get out of this weather. Like, let me get to Florida somehow, South Florida.
So I grew up with two other guys that were my best buddies growing up in high school. And one of them graduated a year early, went to USF with his parents, bought a hotel in St. Pete. So he moved to St. Pete to be close to his parents, and then went to University of South Florida a year ahead of us. So now he's in college, we're in high school. We go down and visit him, my buddy and I, for spring break. He's having a ball. I'm like, Florida's an awesome place. I go through 4 years of college, 3 years, and I'm a senior now. And I'm applying to Boston College, Case Western, UCLA, some other places. And my buddy Ari says, you got to come and apply to Miami. Like, Miami's the place. Come to Miami. So I came down and I visited him. And I went to a bar. Anybody who knows Miami knows Hooligans, right?
Yep.
Which is just, close to Kendall Drive.
Yep.
And US 1. He takes me to Hooligans, and I meet a girl there. She was a Miami Dolphins cheerleader named ZB Cates.
Okay.
And ZB was probably the most beautiful creature I'd laid my eyes on, in my life. And she was super flirtatious and said, you come to Florida for law school and we'll go out.
All right.
So I came and I made my decision to come to
based on that, huh?
Miami, based on him convincing me that this was the right place. The weather was gorgeous. It was, crappy weather in Ohio. And it was like Case Western, Boston, Florida won pretty hands down.
So wait, you got to continue the story about the cheerleader.
So I came down, we went out a couple times and it didn't work out.
Okay. Well, it was worth going to law school there for.
It was.
It's all part of it. And you're still in Florida. So that's pretty cool.
It was good for me. It was the right move for me.
Yeah.
Came down to Florida. One of my best friends from college who was a year ahead of me. She ended up moving to Florida. We got to hang out. She's still down here. She's married to a lawyer. So that was another great bonus for me freshman year and first year in law school, my 1L year. My best friend from high school was here at UM Med. Yeah. So he was down here in med school, and it just worked out really well.
Yeah, that's nice. So did you start your own firm right out of law school, or did you have
I worked for the Justice Department for a little bit.
All right.
And then I came out and I started on my own in my own firm. So I started my own firm, but I was working as the trial lawyer for a PI lawyer, and he was feeding me 100% of my work.
So he was so tell me how that works. So he was getting the cases, and you were just going to trial for him?
Yeah, basically.
And he was settling.
I did all the litigation. He was afraid to go to court at all. Okay. Like, at one point I had a virus and I was like super sick, and I had an agreed order that I needed walked through an 845 hearing. So like a little quick motion hearing. Yep. I needed an agreed order to be stamped by the judge. Way back when, you would just go in and do that. Now you can just send them in, but back then you'd walk it through. So I was going to walk it through, and I called him up and I was like, I can't do this. You must go into court for me. And he's like, there's no way. Get your butt out of bed.
That's interesting.
Because I'm too afraid to go to court. And he did 100 PI cases a month.
Do people actually still do that? Do it like that? I feel like I vaguely heard of that.
Cases for a lot of people.
Is that so? That's pretty common that like an attorney who owns a firm would just do like maybe the negotiations or whatever. But if it goes to court, because like 97% of those cases settle, right? But if it ends up going to court, you have somebody that you send in, like maybe a contractor.
Yeah, there's a couple of those people, or you co-counsel with them, knowing that. And it's a very effective business model, quite honestly.
Is it?
The personal injury business model is very effective when your business model is to bring cases to a settlement posture. And if you can get it there, get it settled for the people. And if you can't, just outsource the litigation and let somebody else do it for a good fee split. And that is one business model. We don't do that in my firm. We try the cases. We have a litigation department and a pre-litigation department, but a lot of people do. A lot of people do.
That's really interesting. I really kind of want to read about that some more, but that's another show, I guess.
Yeah.
Or maybe I could ask you about that later.
Sure.
So I'm interested in your website and something that it said on there, and I'm hoping that, you know, before we get into your book, which looks pretty cool too, I was hoping you could explain. So you're a warrior for justice. Like, I want to know what that means to you, but I also want to know about, you kind of touched on this like bullying thing on your website. And I'm interested personally because I was on this like, and it's too bad I'm going to mess up like the actual name of the commission, but I'm in Massachusetts, and I was in Boston, I was on like the Massachusetts, like I was appointed to be on the committee to study like bullying and elderly housing developments.
Yeah.
I don't recall the exact name. So I'm kind of interested in that point of view. Like you said, you might have had some experiences with bullying. Maybe that made you into a warrior for justice, but I'm just, you know, I'd like to hear what that means to you.
So a couple of things. There's two motifs in my life there. And I think that a lot of people have had this same experience because I think in our age group, I don't know if our kids, my kids at least, I don't know how old you are, but my kids have this as much. My kids probably did because it's the way I was parented. And I think I parented this way. But in Dayton, where I grew up, there was boys will be boys bullying that went on.
Yep.
You know, fighting was kind of just part of growing up. People picking on you was part of growing up. I would walk to the bus stop and people would throw rocks at us, you know, like little pebbles, and, you know, like make it miserable. And I'd come home and be like, I don't want to go on the bus. I mean, this is crazy. And my dad is like, well, you have to go there and you have to punch him in the face. And I'm like, well, I'm in 6th grade. He's in 8th grade. I mean, like, punch him in the face. I'm going to get killed. And my dad's like, yeah, but if you bloody his nose, it'll end. Good luck. Go, like, get out there. And there was one point when I was younger with a kid in my neighborhood who was bullying me coming off the bus. You know, I'd come off the bus and we'd get into a fight and I would lose. And it was only because I just wasn't fighting back. And I would come home and I was crying one day, and my dad was home and he sat me down and said, if you come in again crying and running away from a fight, I'm going to paddle you, and I will paddle you harder than you'll get hit by that kid. I guarantee you. And that was true because my dad, he paddled pretty hard with that fraternity paddle. So I basically stood up for myself the next day, and it worked out really well because we got into a fight. I don't know if I won or lost. I know that I earned my respect points, and then we became friends, and it was like better, like it ended, right?
Wow. Yeah.
And so, you know, it didn't always end well in high school when you get into a fight.
Yep.
But, you know, you learn to stick up for yourself, right? And you learn that bullies are jerks, and most of them are cowards, and most of them don't really like to get hit. And once you hit them once, you're done, like the fight's done.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a theme that I went through growing up in Dayton. And then that dovetailed into the fact that my dad was an insurance agent.
Okay.
And then he became a manager, and he helped a lot of people. And he wasn't like a super high-end insurance agent. He was doing life planning for farmers and plumbers and tradesmen. And like, I had a very middle-class Dayton, Ohio. You know,
Yep.
I grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. It was wonderful, clean, nice people. I didn't know that people stole until I came to Florida. My house was always open.
Right.
My bike lived on my front porch. No one ever stole from me.
Right.
So an honest place, but a tough place, and a place where my dad was very committed to doing the right thing by normal folks, right? So if something went wrong in an application, and a family who has been counting on a life product, because, you know, when you count on a life product and it needs to come to fruition, it means somebody died, right? So a breadwinner dies, and then you go to cash in a life policy, and they're like, oh no, we found this wrong or this wrong, or, and I would hear these stories about how the insurance company would look for ways of screwing people.
Yeah, that sucks.
I grew up on that, right?
Yeah.
And hearing about it, and it would drive my dad crazy.
Wow.
Because he felt terrible. You know, he felt this huge weight of responsibility to make it perfect, because if it wasn't perfect, these people would, you know, like not get what they need,
Right.
God forbid, you know, when they need it. So I grew up not liking insurance at all too.
Okay.
And so those two things, it was like I saw insurance companies bullying people. I kind of didn't like bullying. I found out that I liked fighting. I've always liked fighting. when he told me to start fighting, and I got good at it. I boxed in college. My nickname in college was Box. So, I mean,
That's crazy.
It's just like, I like fighting. I knew I wanted to be a litigator. When I got out and I could be a prosecutor, I thought that's really what I wanted to be. But I realized that I didn't really want to work for the government. And when I came out, I was like, I want to just fight for people that can't fight for themselves. I just like that concept of being the knight in shining armor, being your samurai, being your
fighting the big
being your warrior for justice. I just want to be your warrior for justice.
And you are fighting the insurance company to make sure people get what they feel like they signed up for in the first place, what they're relying on in case of something terrible like that happens, right? So and it actually kind of reminds me of I don't know if you're familiar with Cobra Kai. It's on Netflix now. It's like a
I saw like the first 2 or 3 of them. It's really fun.
It's a Karate Kid like takeoff from, I love all the 80s.
Not a takeoff. It's just a continuation. The same characters, same people.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah, awesome. It's a 30-year later type of thing. It's great. So that kind of like all the fighting, I feel like they should put an episode of that in there. That's pretty good. But yeah, okay. So that, I love that. I love how the story sort of connects with like what your career actually turned out, because a lot of times, we can't turn back. We can't connect the dots, but now like, you can start to connect the dots from this age back to like where it all began and like why you do what you do. So the next thing is about your book here. It's not out yet. Your upcoming book. It's called Not a Good Neighbor. Next week. Okay. A lawyer's guide to beating big insurance by settling your own auto accident case. So let's hear about that. What was your inspiration for writing this book?
So, my inspiration for writing the book was a guy that I met who told me that it would be a great idea for me to write the book, and that put it in my head. But what ended up happening is that when I went out on my own back in early 90s, and I kind of, without knowing it, when you start, you're going to have a culture to your business. You're going to have a vision and a mission and all of that. Whether you articulate it or not, there's something in you that's driving you in a direction, right? And if you don't have anything that drives you in a direction, you're just doing it, you end up with a very muddled, kind of meandering business, right? And you get like taken off course. So you start doing some of this and you start doing some of that. But because I was so focused on wanting to do justice for people and wanting to be the trial lawyer and wanting to get into court and fight with people and just get to court all the time, that was a very clear mission, right? Yeah. I didn't know to articulate that because I had no business courses growing up, but that's what it was. I had a very clear vision and mission, which if people were to talk to you about me, they would have told you that about me, right? Like at one point I got into an accident and the woman who hit me was, we both went to the hospital and her mom was sitting in the waiting room and my staff was in the waiting room. We were a small office then, probably like 7 or 8 of us. And they were in there and they were like, oh my God, Brian's going to tear this woman up. She'll be bankrupt forever. He'll take everything she owns. Like all they could think about is like how badly I was going to beat this person up because, because I'm such, like the way I am, I fight, So this poor mom is sitting and listening to it. She starts to cry, like she's like, oh my God, my daughter has hit the meanest person on earth,
Yeah.
So it turned out that I became friends with the girl and I helped her out and she needed a divorce lawyer and I got that set up for her. It turned out very good for her, but, and good for me too, because it's the best karmic story of my life. I know this doesn't really dovetail in, but this is what ended up happening because it goes together a little bit.
Yep.
So just put that aside. Years go by and the financial crash of 2010 hits, right? Like 2009, 10, we're all like hubris. My middle name must have been hubris because I was buying shit that I thought I couldn't lose on. And all of a sudden we lost on a lot of stuff, right? So in trying to keep my business alive, I was bringing in every line of business that I could. I started to do mortgage modifications and bankruptcies, and I would get a person to do this and I'd get a person to do that. And we were doing all this stuff that wasn't in my vision. It wasn't in my mission. It wasn't in who I was. It was just anything to float overhead. It was that meandering craziness, right? In the middle of all that. So that moment when I hit that woman was back in 2000, maybe less, maybe it was like 1998 or 9, right? So that happened in 98 or 99. 10 years go by and I'm in the middle of this financial crisis of my life and I'm selling a house that I thought I was going to get a lot of money for because I bought a house that was way too much money. Both of them were underwater and I was trying to sell one. And So I'm trying to sell this house and I needed to do work to it. And I had a buddy of mine who was a contractor getting things done. So one of the things I needed was new flooring. I needed new carpeting in a room. So we got the new carpeting and I said, where's the carpeting bill? And he goes, well, it's in the house.
Yeah.
So I go to the house and there's a card in the kitchen waiting for me. And I open it up and it says, dear Mr. LaBovick, you may not remember me, but I hit you in your car 10 years ago. And it was a terrible situation. And you were so nice to me. You got me a divorce lawyer and you helped me get out of a terrible marriage. And now I've met a great guy and we own this carpeting company. And we know that, you know, you're trying to get rid of your house. And so this carpeting job is on us.
Wow.
Because we really appreciate when I needed help, that karmic circle came back.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing.
Is that crazy?
Yeah. That's
So
great.
true story. True story. I still have the letter. So that happened. Right. And I thought, you know, like, gosh, you know, like that's craziness. So that moment of my life where we were totally off balance, you know, like I grew my practice to like 30 people. So I was like one guy when I started in the early 2000s, and we had grown to 30 people, 5 lawyers or 4 lawyers, 4 or 5 lawyers. And we were just, you know, every year was a trajectory up and more people were coming and calling. We had a very wonderful business model, right? And then financial crisis, and then 5 years of stagnation. Like we're like this, you know,
right.
with no vision, no mission, no anything. And 3-4 years ago now, we kind of went back. And I went back and I was trying to discover, like, where did I go off course? Like, what happened, you know? Okay. And I had a business coach, a friend of mine, who came in and said, let me be a business coach with you, because this is what I do for a living. So he worked with us for a year, and I call it my year of business therapy.
Okay.
But he got me back on track with this concept, and we hashed it out for a long time. Like, who am I? Where's my business going? How do I articulate it? And we came up with Warriors for Justice.
Okay.
And I loved it. I loved the concept. I love the name. It was just, it fit me. It fit right, you know? And we were like, well, what's the mission? And we were like, you know, we need a mission that meets that warrior for justice, right? So our mission is to maximize justice by aggressively fighting for our clients' rights. So very specific words there, you know,
Sure.
Maximum justice to fight for your clients' rights, right? So that's our mission, and everybody in my firm knows it. And we start every meeting that way. And I was like, all right, so let's work on what our core behaviors are going to be, so we know where to go with this. And we picked up 4 core behaviors, with fight to win as the first one, relentless innovation, because I'm constantly innovating crazy innovation things, which we could get into. I got a lot of crazy things out there. 2 pieces of software, a billing company. We're doing a lot of shit. So, and then own it, which is treating everybody like family and owning those cases, right? Oh. And then passion to serve, because my wife and I have a lot of connectivity to our community.
Yep.
And we feel like karmically, which is this back circle, right? You got to give to get. And when you do that and you go to the world with open arms, the world gives back to you a lot, you know, like you get more than you give. So just keep giving, you know, and you'll get. Right. So you got to give to get. So that's our 4 core values, and that's how we live.
So tell me more. That's interesting. Tell me more about your innovations, like something that you're doing that's really like kind of,
you know, like have you ever done a personality profile? I love Pop Psych, and I do these, you know, like Myers-Briggs and Colby and DISC and, you know, Gilbert's work in progress index. And there's all sorts of these pop psychology things that teach you about who you are and how you work, right?
Yep.
I'm the type of a guy who always wants to put the puzzle pieces together in a different order than the way you're supposed to do it. For whatever reason, I'm always thinking, how can I make this thing better? How can I take this system and make it better? How can I do litigation better? So one of the things that was going on is that as the firm was growing, right, we were in this trajectory up. We needed to be able to handle all of these leads coming in, because the internet had started, and web advertising and lead purchasing, and, you know, putting your name places. You can't handle all of the inflow of information. I needed a tool for that. So I started looking around for that. I didn't like the CRMs that were out there because they weren't really legal specific at the time. Captora didn't exist. Lead Docket didn't exist. Smart Advocate didn't exist. Litify didn't exist. You know, Filevine didn't exist. So none of these things that are out in the market now existed.
Right.
So I created my own software for that. So I have a software product called Intake Matters, that we built that is very solid. It's a very similar product to, I think the thing that it's probably most similar to is Captora, which is now purchased and owned by a big corporation. It was a smaller company owned by Gary Falkowitz and Denny Newberg, and they're brilliant guys, and they built a great product. But my product is good too, and that's what we run our intake on. So that's one thing, and we put a lot of time, money, and effort into it. My size firm. So what happened is that once we did this, the firm took off again, right? So now the firm takes off again, and we're running fast. And in COVID, like during COVID, I grew 18 people and 2 lawyers.
Wow.
So we didn't turn back. We didn't have stymied. We didn't stop working. We were way ahead of the curve. We have our own virtual web, our virtual cloud in Orlando in a data center with Google and the Defense Department. We have 2 racks. We have all of our servers, all of our backups. We have a ghosting server in Atlanta so that God forbid anything happens. And like everything is super advanced on the computer side.
Wow.
And so when COVID hit and we were like, everybody's got to go home, we picked up our laptops and we went home. Like there was no stopping work.
Right.
There was no stopping the advertising. There was no stopping. Like it was full steam ahead.
Yep.
And because other people pulled back and we kept pushing forward, we went from being a Florida provider of legal services to a national provider of legal services. And we started to basically push the message out that we were here for people nationally.
What kind of cases were you doing nationally? Like
mostly Social Security disability.
Oh, okay.
So we took on SSD as a you know, a type of a claim that we were handling for people about 4 or 5 years ago, seriously. And we were growing it incrementally. And now we're growing it. I mean, we probably are bringing in about 5,000 leads a month.
Wow.
So it's a lot to process.
Now around the country, different leads?
Yeah, around the leads, around the country.
Wow.
Florida based we really try to stick with Florida, and we're trying to push Florida and get our clients in Florida so we can touch them. But even if we're in Seattle, Washington, we can show up because it's a Zoom hearing now. So we can,
and it's also the type of law. I'm licensed in 3 states. The type of law is something that you can do wherever you're licensed, right?
No,
so
you can do it anywhere as long as you're licensed in one place.
In one state, state. That's what I meant. But yeah, because that was something I was looking into for a while, like doing maybe some Social Security disability. Because and I kind of read up on it and stuff. But that's very smart.
It's a great thing, and people are like, it's a very hard field because the people are in a very bad way.
Right.
You have to be very client centric, which is hard because you don't make a lot of money on one case. So how much attention can you give somebody when you're not making any money on it? So we've figured out that formula, and I think people are very happy for the most part. Some people will never be happy, but now I'm trying to figure out the SSI formula. So SSDI is Social Security Disability, which is a federal disability program that you pay into. You pay tax dollars into that, right? You pay your disability insurance tax. So if you've worked 5 out of the last 10 years, you have a right to that insurance. But if you haven't, if for some reason, and there's a lot of people that haven't, some people have mental issues, some people have physical issues, and they haven't done that, and they need the help, right? So there is a government charity-like benefit, which is supplemental income, right? So you get SSI, it's a very low amount of money. So the lawyer's fees on it are almost nothing.
Right.
So it's very hard calculus on how to help those people in a way that you don't go bankrupt trying to help those people, right? Even with the fee, you can't get there. So I'm really trying hard to innovate and help those people. That's my next goal.
So do you think you'll take on any other different types of law in the future?
Yeah, so we've got an entire game plan on where we're going. So we do personal injury and maritime, with a lot of maritime down here with cruises and boat accidents and stuff. Yep. So that's our PI side, single event.
Oh, that's right. Spencer, right? Ehrenfeld?
Yeah, I know Spencer from Miami. He actually went to law school. He's a year behind us. And he was, I think, my wife's intern at Janet Reno's office.
Really? Well, he commented.
She was a prosecutor.
You'll see it after the show, but he commented on your Instagram story. I don't know if you noticed when we featured you, and he said, I don't know, great guy or something. So I like him. He's a great guy. He's the nicest guy. I connected with him right when I started Lawyer Stories in 2017, and we've had him on the podcast. He was one of my first shows, and he's a really good guy, very like mentor type, and just always
Yeah.
wants to help.
So he would speak at Jazz Fest, at the Jazz Fest seminar for AAJ.
Yep.
Well, I didn't want to go and speak. I did want to go to Jazz Fest. So I went every year and we see each other.
Yeah.
We shared a cab back from Jazz Fest one year with me and my wife and him. So yeah, we've known Spencer for a long time.
Very
great
good
guy. Great
So,
lawyer.
Good. So you were telling me you might do some maritime law.
No, we do it. We have an entire maritime practice. One of my partners, Peter, is just a total maritime guru. He was the editor of the big maritime book. He's one of the editors of that. So we do a lot of maritime and a lot of PI, which is kind of my thing. And then we have Social Security Disability, which is Elizabeth. She's the director of that in our firm. She's incredible partner. And then we have a work comp practice. And we are looking actually for a director of that now. So we have an interview on Monday, which I think we're going to hire somebody, but that's kind of a growing practice. It's the smallest of the practices. And then we have a thing called personal injury protection.
Yep.
You guys have that in Massachusetts. You have PIP. You're a no-fault state. I know that because I do PIP in your state. So that's the Boston office. We were doing PIP here in Florida, and I ended up starting a medical billing company because I saw that there was this need for people that understood automobile billing and comp billing, right? So I started this company. We have it has a very nice presence. It's done very well. When they need legal work, they hire the LaBovick Law Group to do their legal work, right? Okay. And we do billing in Boston. We do billing in California. A year and a half ago now, almost 2 years ago in April, I sold a majority share to another company, another group. And they're running that company now. And now I'm just legal counsel for them. But in doing that, they've blown it up because they knew what they were doing.
Yeah.
So they've blown it up. They've increased process. They've got 30 people in India helping process. They've got 25 people on. I mean, like they blew it up on me, which is amazing.
That's awesome.
But it allowed me to concentrate on being a lawyer again a couple of years ago.
What about your book though? Like, did this take you a long time to read? Like, tell me a little bit about this book coming out next week.
So I'm doing this, right? And I'm blowing up and my firm is blowing up and I don't have the ability to do everybody's case, right? So I told somebody the other day, I said, if I were a restaurant, I feel like I'm a 20 table restaurant, right? I'm not a 100 table restaurant.
Right.
So I'm only going to be able to turn, if it's 20 tables, that's 3 turns a night. I can serve about 60 tables worth. Let's say 60 times 4. I can get about 240 meals in a night, right? For my entire community, 240 meals a day, right? To do that, I'm not going to be able to be fish and sushi and Chinese and steaks, right? I have to be one thing to be good at it. Right. So that if you want to come to my restaurant, you're only going to get this, right?
Right.
And because of that, it's the same thing in being a lawyer, right? I can only do so many cases well. And there are a lot of people that want help that come in and they're like, I need help and I don't have the bandwidth to help, but I want to help.
Right.
So I had a guy who said, listen, you don't have to help me. Just give me some advice and help me do this, which I hate doing, right? You hate doing that because you're on the hook, right? Now I'm on the hook. They're going to be like, oh, Brian told me to do this and now I'm getting sued and there's malpractice. And so you don't want to do that, but you don't want to not help. So he said, you should write a book and help people.
Okay. Well, that's why when I
read and fun.
Because when I read this, a lawyer's guide to beating insurance by settling your own auto, I was like, okay, so this is like sort of a how to do it type of book, right? Okay.
It's a how to do it, but not just a boring step-by-step how to do it, because I don't feel like people learn that way, right? So it's a bunch of stories that teach you how to do it and then give you the paperwork to do it, but in teaching you by storytelling, which I think people appreciate more.
Okay, that's great. Yeah. Congratulations. Coming out next week. That's
yeah,
really
I'm
good.
Super excited about it, like crazy excited. I can't believe that I'm actually going to be a published author. It's just crazy.
Yeah, no, that's wild. So did we leave anything out? Like, did you want to mention, I know you have a lot. I feel like you have a ton of stories. I want to make sure we touch on everything, including your firm, your book. Like,
you've gotten a lot. I mean, we've gotten a lot of stuff out. It's amazing.
Good. I'm
You're
glad.
a great interviewer, so thank you.
Really? Well, I appreciate that. Thank you very much.
It's great to meet you. You have a bunch of great people on your podcast. I was listening. You're 37 in. I probably got 20 of them in listening to parts. And yeah, just interesting people. And you go out of the country and you see people from Israel. You see people from India. Amazing. You give these really interesting stories. You're not just like, oh, I'm only going to do like the really.
Like my whole thing was. I don't mind listening about cases. Like I like cases and stuff, but I'm like kind of a sociologist type of guy. Like I liked sociology and the law when I went to UMass. I was a legal studies major. And I think like hearing why people really like got hooked on law. And like, I felt like I had a story, like why I decided to go to law school. And then, so many other people had a story, and it just sort of, the whole thing sort of just like grew a little bit. And, this has been for me such a great experience being able to like connect with so many people from like everywhere that it's just such a passion and now a little bit of a business. But it's just it's a great time. Actually, I really enjoy doing the podcast and everything. And it's, it's a pleasure to talk to you. And I know you're busy guy as illustrated today. So
yeah, I don't know if I'm actually, I'm into a group called APAC. I don't know if you know what APAC is, but it's the American Israeli.
Okay. Yeah, I've heard of it. Yep.
So it's a lot of just strengthening the U.S.-Israeli relationship. So I'm really into that group. I'm really involved in it. Okay. And so I was just here, talking to people, kind of prepping up, because tomorrow we have a lobby day, and I'll be in DC lobbying, but virtually. That now normally I'm there, but it's just kind of cool. So I'm here working anyways. That's awesome. In my office regardless.
Yeah, well, we appreciate you coming on today. And Brian LaBovick, check out the firm on Instagram, the book, Not a Good Neighbor, A Lawyer's Guide to Beating Big Insurance by Settling Your Own Auto Accident Case. Best of luck with sales. Let us know if we could do anything for you and put it out there to our community. And
when I come to Mass, because I got a bunch of people that I represent in Mass, I'll come and see you. I'd love to meet you in person.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'd love that.
Post COVID, like after.
Yeah, I know what a crazy year. Yeah. Stay right there. I'm just gonna tell everybody, wherever you are in the world today, enjoy yourselves. Cheers.